Anyways, all right, let's hop on. I don't know who else is joining us, but they will get here when they do. I appreciate those again that are on time. Today we are talking about confidence in conversations. I have this buyer objections that Abby will get out to you. I will also throw it. I know there's a way to throw it in the chat box. So hold on. Let me see what I can do. There we go.
It's easier if Abby just sends it. Don't even bother putting it in the chat box.
Well, we'll just throw it in there just in case.
Because we can't grab it while after the call's over, right?
No, you have to grab it now.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
or never.
I'm on my way to go show houses in Antioch, so I'm listening today.
All right. Well, Abby, I also emailed that to you so that you can share it after the call. So that is available. But in case you wanted to follow along, it's there in the chat box. Objections, right? So we can have all the scripts in the world and memorize everything, what we should say to somebody. But unless we really practice objections, that's where it's really going to fall apart on us, because it's really easy to, walk up to somebody's door and be like, hey, I'm Amy. I'm a local agent. I live around the corner. I was wondering if you were looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, or knew anybody that was looking to move to the neighborhood, right? Really easy to say that. But then what happens when they're like, well, I already have an agent, right? So then how do we respond? So I went through and found some objections. It took me a little while to find some that I actually liked the response of. So I thought we would cover some of those today. There's buyer objections. I think that these are some good ones because they are very pertinent to what you guys are doing as far as, right, you go and find a buyer at an open house, Zillow lead, whatever that might be, and you're trying to meet with them to get them to sign that buyer representation agreement, or just to, get to know them. Because ultimately it's not super safe to like have somebody call your phone and then go meet them at a property. You should meet them in the office first during office hours when somebody else is available in there, so that you don't end up as a missing person. That being said, I fully understand that sometimes, especially with our internet leads like Zillow, it's sometimes important to meet them at the property first and build that rapport so that you can get them into the office. And oftentimes, where you're showing properties like Antioch, our office isn't there, and so they might be in a different area than our office is located. Number one, you can always call up another Realty One office and ask them if you can utilize their office to meet somebody there. Totally appropriate. The other thing is that you can also call, like if you use a title company and such, oftentimes they'll let you go in and use their conference rooms as well, so that you can meet somebody locally. Okay, there's my disclaimer. So if you interact with somebody and they're like, oh, well, I have some places picked out that I saw. Can we go take a look at these before meeting? Right. You can respond with, oh, you've started the process. That's awesome. I'll tell you what, why don't we meet for a half hour before our first showings, and then we can head to your selected properties from there. Right. And you can even add like, hey, why don't we meet for a half hour before our first showings? That way we can make sure there's nothing else on the market that matches your criteria, and then we can head to your selected properties from there, right? Super simple. The other thing that you can do too, just so you know, is if, especially for like those Zillow leads and stuff, you can always ask them to send you a copy of their ID. And please let people know where you're going. Hold on just a second. There's a bird making all this noise out here. It's very distracting. All right, there we go. Goodbye, birdie. All right, so let people know where you're going, what properties you're going to be showing when you're meeting them there. Give them the person's phone number or information that you're meeting with if you've never met with that person before. Second response that you can do is, hey, that's awesome that you've started the process. I know the thought of meeting can be boring, but this is a super exciting meeting where I get to know your criteria in detail so that I can best be of service to you. Does that make sense? You could even say, so I get to know what your must-haves are in a property, and we can look at the MLS together and make sure there's nothing else that matches that criteria, right? So you want to make it exciting and fun. Do you think that would help in helping you to get that first meeting in the office? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Lonnie, for your response. I appreciate it. I'll forgive you for being late because you responded.
I'm driving. God, yes. I have to keep hitting the unmute button.
Well, I like how Anastasia took that as a personal attack. All right. How about, you're right, we always talk about this. Well, how do you handle like them not wanting to sign the buyer broker agreement, right? Why do I have to sign a buyer broker agreement right now? When we purchased last time, we didn't have to sign anything, or what's that all about, right? So good response here is, I understand where you're coming from. This buyer brokerage agreements are put in place to help us clearly define our relationship. We have a contract to simply protect all of us. How about we make the agreement only for 2 weeks to see if we're the right fit? And after that, we can go our separate ways if it isn't the right fit, or we can extend the agreement if it is. Does that work for you? Right? So we can shorten that time. Nobody says you have to put a year or 6 months on that buyer broker agreement. We can always extend it down the road. So helping people ease in and giving them that like 2-week trial period to see how things are going. And keep in mind that that buyer broker agreement protects you, that if after 2 weeks you decide it's not a good fit, or they decide it's not a good fit, when that gets canceled or at the expiration, you provide them a list of all the properties that you showed them or that you did work for them on their behalf. Not just that you emailed to them, but that you actually like interacted with the agent, or that you actually showed them. You provide them that list. If they choose, if you filled out the buyer broker agreement correctly, if they choose to make an offer on one of those properties, you are still in the loop on that in representing them and getting the commission on that sale. So it protects you for the work that you do for those clients. Okay. Even if we did our buyer broker agreement for a year, the buyers have the right to cancel that agreement at any time. We don't want to work with people that don't want to work with us. So there's no problem with shortening up that time frame. Sorry, as a trial period. So we can totally do that. So I like these. So remember, with any of these objections that we go over today, or any of these, there's a bunch on this sheet. We want to practice them. So role play. So if you don't have a role play partner, it's a good time to find somebody to practice with, like 2, 3, 5 times a week, right? Ideally, role play every single day for 30 minutes at the start of your day. But if that's too much for you, find somebody that you can practice with at least a couple times a week, where you're going through, you can actually have somebody throwing out these, role play, and have somebody throw out different objections off this list, and you can read those responses back. The best way to commit these to memory are by reading through them over and over and over again. And I highly recommend reading through them out loud versus in your head. You're going to remember them better. Another way to help remember things is by writing them. So if we write these down, it will help us to remember them. And sometimes we want to break it down. So how about if we go on to the next one, that I know I'm not pre-approved, but financing won't be an issue, right? How often have we heard that one? Don't go show people that aren't pre-approved. Okay. Maybe one property. I have a 1 property rule. I'm willing to show anybody 1 property, but beyond that, we have to have all our ducks in a row. So just kind of know that's where I'm at. So I'm not pre-approved, but financing won't be an issue. So if we want to remember and commit this objection to memory, which is, that's great, I'm glad you're in a good position here. One of the main reasons for a pre-approval is your official pre-approval letter is required by all sellers. The other thing is, attaching it to your purchase contract can greatly improve your negotiating power. Does that make sense? Right? So a good way to break it down would be just break it down in sections. That's great. I'm glad you're in a good position here, right? That's great. I'm glad you're in a good position here. That's great. I'm glad you're in a good position here. Like, repeat it 3 or 4 times, and then we can move on to the next one. That's great. I'm glad you're in a good position here. One of the main reasons for a pre-approval is your official pre-approval letter is required by sellers. By all sellers, right? So then you would keep going. That's great. I'm glad you're in a good position here. One of the main reasons for a pre-approval is your official pre-approval letter is required by all sellers. That's great. I'm glad you're in a good position here. One of the main reasons for the pre-approval is your official pre-approval letter is required by all sellers, right? And then we can move on to the next sentence. So we're just going to kind of repeat it, commit to memory, and then just keep repeating it. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, no, maybe so?
Yes, it does.
Yes. Fabulous.
Yes.
Great. Anastasia, don't crash. You don't have to respond.
I'm getting gas.
Okay. So, right. And then we can write it down. If we write it, remember when like you used to have to write your spelling words in like elementary school, like 20 times, you know, one night, that would be your homework. There's a reason for that. And some people have like a muscle memory type memory. And by writing things down, it helps us remember it. So by saying it, it helps us remember it. By reading it, it helps us remember it. And by writing it, it helps us remember it. And then also again, by practicing. So there's your not pre-approved objection handler. You could, well, anyways, how about I've been out on a few showings with another realtor. I'm receiving properties from a few realtors in town, right? So either one of those objections, that's great. I'm glad you started the process already. I know the industry can be a little confusing with compensation. So let me quickly explain how I'm paid. In almost all cases, the seller is responsible for both their realtor and the buyer's realtor's commission. Therefore, we actually don't get paid until the transaction closes. For that reason, we request that our buyers remain loyal to us and will remain loyal to you. I'll tell you what, go through all the information we went over today and let me know if you would like to work together. This has to be a win-win relationship for everyone. How does that sound? Right? Or maybe you haven't even sat down with them. It may be, instead of go through all the information, it may be, let's sit down and talk about my process for helping you find the home of your dreams. And then you can decide if you would like to work together. This has to be a win-win relationship for everyone. How does that sound? Right? So we can tweak it a little bit in the middle, depending on where that buyer is at, but that gives us a good way to handle that objection of, oh, I've got another realtor, right? Or I'm receiving properties from a few realtors in town. That's not uncommon, right? I tell you guys all the time that when we have people like walk through an open house or we have a buyer lead, wherever it comes in from, like set them up on a drip, right? Get in their heads, get in their email boxes with those properties. By the way, Real Scout or One Suite? I don't remember which one. One of them now has the abilities to your clients rather than email them. I mean, it does both, but it sends them a text message. So most people kind of avoid emails at this point. I think I stopped it. I feel like it was One Suite, but I could be wrong. Anyways, look at both of those because one of them gives you the ability to be able to email. So I got a notification like every day, like, hey, a new property matched my criteria. That might be the way to win somebody over. Anyways, great. Objection handler here. Again, you can tweak that middle part depending on whether you're sitting down with them or whether you're trying to get a sit down with them. But you want to set yourself apart as the realtor of choice and as the local expert. I've been through a few new show homes recently, right? Like new homes. That's great. I'm glad you started the process already. Dealing with new homes is a slightly different process than resale. I can definitely help you work with builders as well. The tricky thing about their model is that they require me to be there the first time you go through the sales center. So I'll tell you what, we can touch base with the builders you have met and then let them know that you'll be represented. If not, I do understand, but I will not be able to advise you as you work through that transaction. Are you okay with us having a quick conversation, or would you prefer to go at it alone? Right? So we always have these buyers that are like, oh, I already walked through a couple of the sales centers when they're looking at new homes. It's okay to say, hey, do you mind if we have a conversation? Like, who did you already visit? Let's have a conversation. If you decide to go ahead and purchase at one of those communities, I won't be able to help you through that process. Are you okay with us having a quick conversation, or would you prefer to go at it alone? Right? It's okay to ask that. Does everybody like, I kind of like that objection handler. Anybody else like that one? No, nobody likes. No, thank you, Adriana. How about my friend might be selling me their house? right? Oh, that's great. I'm glad you started the process already. Private deals can work well. There are two approaches here that you can choose from. I can still help advise, negotiate, and bring the transaction to a close. I would just request my compensation from the seller. Don't say your friend, because then it makes it too personal for them. Or you can handle it alone. Do you have a preference? Right? So we're still like, hey, buyer, we're not going to charge you a fee. We're going to work it out with the seller, right? I can still help advise, negotiate, and bring the transaction to a close. You can always take it a step further too, right? I can still advise, negotiate, and bring the transaction to a close, and make sure somebody's looking out for your best interests. I would just request my compensation from the seller. Or you can handle it alone. Do you have a preference? Right? I like that one. Same thing, right? You might see that not only like my friend might be selling me their house, but maybe the landlord might be selling me their house, or the neighbor, right? So you can throw in anybody in there. It doesn't have to be friend. We always want to keep it seller though. They've been through a number of homes, right? How is the process working out for you? They will most likely respond that they are frustrated, they can't find what they are looking for. Set up a quick meeting or phone call to review their criteria, discuss criteria, and move back to the magical wording of 85% home, 3 things. I don't know what that is. Let them know that everyone wants what is slightly out of their budget, and this happens at all price points, right? So we'll see if it highlights the magical wording at the bottom. I don't think this one does. But setting up a quick call to discuss criteria, and then maybe talking about how you're willing to, look at off-market properties, to send out golden letters to properties that might not be on the market yet that matches their criteria. Like, talk about different ways that you might be able to find things that aren't on the MLS. If you were on the training yesterday, the Q&A, we talked about, like, we went on to berries to see what the, and I showed you guys kind of the real trends, the graphs and such that you can pull up. And we saw that there's only like 90 active properties on the market, or 90 new properties in Vacaville right now. So that's not very many properties, right? You got buyers looking for property. There's a good chance that they're not going to find one that matches their criteria right away. It might take a little bit longer. So we need to get creative in how we're willing to search for properties, and how we're able to find our buyers the properties that match their criteria. And we have to think outside the box. If we could just pick up this house and put it down over there, right? I totally understand what you mean here. This is one of the challenging aspects of buying a home. Remember the 3 things we discussed in the meeting: home, price, and location. This is exactly what's coming into light here. Usually when I chat with buyers like yourself about this, I ask them if there are 2 or 3 things that are really important. What are the 2 non-negotiables in the 2 out of 3 items? Right? Is it more important location, or more important like layout of the property? How about, I don't care if they're offended, I'm just going to submit the lowest price. Anybody got some lowball clients out there? I know Anastasia had one. I've had those that are like, oh, we want to submit low because we want to feel like we're getting a deal. And then this way we know we're at the seller's bottom by submitting a super low offer. For sure, you should be focused on getting the best price. Offending the seller is no problem at all, but one just must be prepared to lose the property or end up paying more than you may have originally. Let me explain. Offending a seller can cause them not to respond at all. If you start coming up on your price until you receive a response, weakens your negotiating position. As they begin to see your interest, they will hold out, and then you will likely pay more for the property than you may have. It's not a standard back and forth on the price negotiations, as terms, conditions, the market, and motivation all play into the final price. In these cases, we usually recommend coming in on the lower side, but still at a reasonable price. This usually results in the best price for you. Does this make sense? Like, hey, we still want to come in something semi-reasonable, but on the lower end, right? And oftentimes, like, if you've got a property priced at 600,000 and my buyers are like, man, I really like that house, but we can't pay 600,000 for that. Like, it needs new floors and the bathrooms haven't been updated and it looks like the roof is wearing. You can always be like, what are you willing to pay? Right? And if they're like, man, the highest we would go on this one's 580, then we wouldn't want to submit an offer at 520,000 because chances are the sellers are going to reject it, or we're going to keep like incrementally coming up until we're at 600,000. But we may come in at like 570 with the hopes that we can counter and end up right in that 580 range, right? So that's the difference between like on the lower side of reasonable versus offending the sellers. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. I really like this one because it does explain to your buyers why it's a bad idea to come in on the super low end. Number one, you might miss out. Number two, if we keep coming back with a little higher, then the sellers might hold out. You may end up paying more than if we just come in at a reasonable price to begin with. So I do like that one. All I want in a home is the best price or deal out there, right? I'm glad you're focused on finding great value. I can certainly help you on this front. There are two ways to get a great deal on a property. You know the market and jump on one that comes on ASAP to avoid anyone else tying it up, or you focus just on properties that have high days on market and no other buyers wanted, right? At their asking price. Now, there is no right or wrong here, but there is one of the two Now there is no right or wrong here, but is there one of these two approaches that jumps out at you, right? And we all know that in this market, it's kind of hard for number one, right? Jumping on a property that comes on the market ASAP, because oftentimes we have like offer review dates. They're not reviewing for the first week on market. So there's things that prevent us without coming in with a super high offer, which defeats our purpose of getting that property, tying that property up and getting it off the market to get a good value. So oftentimes you may want to just move into, depending on what the market looks like if somebody said, hey, all I want is the home is the best price or deal out there. I'm glad you focused on finding great value. I can certainly help you on this front. We will need to focus on properties that have a high days on market that no other buyers wanted, right? They were rejected at their asking price. Those are the ones that we should focus on to get you the best value possible, right? So we may want to focus on that rather than giving them options at this point, because we know that sometimes jumping on the first one that comes on the market is probably going to result in not a great value. Oh, how about I'm not ready to buy for at least another 6 months, so there's no need for us to sit down yet. Anybody heard that one? Anybody know? How about if you're 6 months out, I would recommend starting to get a handle on the market. Most buyers we have find a ton of value in receiving properties that are coming on the market, even when they are 6 or more months out. Would you be interested in getting a handle on the market before starting the shopping process? I can happily set up a quick auto search for you. Right? Or if it's a first-time home buyer, perfect. If you're 6 months out, I would recommend starting to get a handle on the home buying process. Right? Most buyers we have find a ton of value in getting a handle early on what that home buying process looks like, even when they're 6 or more months out, so that they know what to expect and they can prepare to purchase their first home. Right? So we can tweak it just a little bit for if you've got an experienced home buyer versus a first-time home buyer. If I already have the property I would like picked out, will you provide me with commission back since you don't have to work as hard? That's great that you have a property in mind. If we don't have to tour through as many homes, that does cut down on time. But the true value in a trusted realtor is advising, negotiating, and bringing the deal to completion. As a rule, we never do commission kickback, as it's actually not permitted by the regulatory body or you could always say not permitted by the California Department of Real Estate. This is because commission agreements are between the listing brokerage and the seller. Our compensation comes from the listing brokerage to our brokerage. Does this make sense? Right? I'll tell you what, if this goes quickly, I'll make sure to get you some great seats at a hockey game and a nice dinner beforehand, right? Or you can like kind of let them know, or you can, well, anyways, I wouldn't even go into that second section unless they are still objecting. Then you might decide what you want to do. You can always say, I'll make sure that, if this goes quickly, I'll make sure to, that you get a 1-year home warranty, or I'll upgrade your home warranty to a 2-year policy, right? So you could always upgrade that home warranty. We aren't in any rush. We will just wait for the right property to come up. That's great that you aren't in a rush. This puts you in a great position when it comes time to negotiate. In moving through the process, we find buyers are in one of 4 stages: curiosity, interest, desire, and commitment. For the curiosity and interest stage, buyers are very focused online and eliminating properties. Once they move to desire, we have to be out looking at properties. Where do you guys put yourself in the 4 stages? Right? Take all the time you need to find the right home. You shouldn't be rushed. I just don't want you to miss out on a great property, right? So there's a couple different ways to handle that one. I don't mind busy, loud road, smell, bad street, right? Whatever it is. I don't mind the smell. I don't mind the bad street. That's awesome. Just so you know, this may affect you when it comes time to sell. So if you're buying a property with the potential negative, you just want to make sure that you're getting a discount from the comparables, as you'll likely have to sell it for less than the comparable down the road. Does this make sense? Right? Or that's awesome. When people ask if certain things are a deterrent or not, I let them know that there are still buyers out there, but the pool of buyers shrinks. Does this make sense? What should I be looking through when I go through a house? Great question. Although that can depend on the buyer, I recommend looking for things you can't change and picture your life in the home. I'll be pointing out the important drawbacks or positives that may affect you on the resale market. Also, I can answer questions you may have as we go through. One of most importance is picturing your life in the home and determining if the layout works for you, right? I know Adriana had a buyer that said, oh, well, do you have a checkoff sheet for us as we go through the properties of what we should be looking for? Like, it's so hard to determine what a buyer should be looking for when going through the properties, right? Because it depends from buyer to buyer what their must-haves are. But this is a great response of, although it can depend on the buyer, right? I recommend looking for things that you can't change and picture your life in the home. I'll be pointing out important drawbacks or positives that may affect you on the resale market. Also, I can answer any questions that you may have as we go through. Of most importance is being able to picture your life in the home and determining that the layout works for you, right? The bones. Okay. Seller objections. Dun, dun, dun. How many years of experience? Aren't you brand new? Right? Be very confident. This is an opportunity for you. Never say 3 months, right? I'm in my first year and doing very well, right? So you can always say that if you're a newer agent, I'm in my first year and doing very well. You can always come back to why you're in real estate, right? I was very successful at XYZ, whatever your previous line of business was, with sales and with negotiations. So I had to get into real estate and it's paying off for my clients. So you can always circle back to that to build expertise, even though you may not have it in real estate. Co-brand, right? And use stats. We've talked about this before. I'm new, but my tenacious sales skills and hard work are really paying off. I also have my broker, team member, etc., that sells X number of homes in a year that will help me negotiate your sale. Right? So use the backer of your mentor, use the backer of our brokerage, use the backing of Ed as the broker. The major benefit is I have an experienced team behind me, plus I'm newer. Your awesome listing gets more attention. It's frustrating when your listing doesn't get the attention it deserves, and busier agents sometimes just don't have the time to give you this much attention, right? It's all in how you spin it, whether you're an experienced agent or a new agent, it's all in how you spin that and share your story. You're the expert. You tell me what it should be listed at. Right? The market speaks and we listen. Based on the information we will go over, the current market range is 600,000 to 625,000. Does that work for you? Right? So oftentimes we always give a range until it comes time to actually put a number on the listing agreement, but ultimately we want our sellers to be in charge of that. But we also want to remind them the market speaks. That price is too low. I understand and I can appreciate you were expecting more. The market ultimately determines the value of a property, and we have to stay ahead of the market. Right? We can always try with a higher price as long as we are ready to move the price should we not see the action. Are you comfortable with lowering the price after 1 week on the market if we don't get the traction required to sell? Right? And that might be different versus like, you know, listing at 50,000 over what you think where it should be priced versus like 10,000, right? Oftentimes we don't want to list it too high where we don't think there's anything to support those comps, because if we put something on the market significantly higher than it should be, and then we do a price drop, ultimately it's going to result in a lower sales price to our sellers. So we don't want to do that necessarily. And if, you know, we recommend 600,000, or like, man, I was really hoping for 625. We can always say, well, we can try at a higher price. And as long as we are ready to move the price, should we not see the action? Are you going to be comfortable lowering the price after 1 week on the market if we don't get the traction required to sell, right? If we don't see the number of showings that we should be seeing in order to get an offer. I won't sell that low. I completely understand your frustration. Please take some time to review the material and discuss your needs. We are here to help and fight for the highest possible price when the time is right. Right? If they're really like, man, it's 650 or nothing, and you're like, there's no comps over 600, and they're like, I won't sell that low. Don't waste your time on that listing, right? Give them the data, provide them the comps, show them all the properties that have sold in the area, so that they can take it all in and review it. Part of that's why I like to drop off the pre-listing package before my listing appointment with the CMA report or the market analysis report in it, so that they have a chance to kind of look through those comps and have an understanding of what the market's doing in their area before we even sit down. We want to start higher and test the market, right? The choice is always yours to make, and we will back you up 100%. We just don't want to see you chase the market down and end up with a lower price than anticipated based on this evaluation. Would you be willing to reduce in 2 weeks' time if this is the case? Or no problem, let's do it. And let's also keep a very close eye on the market's response. We will let you know right away if we are helping sell other listings. It will be our duty and our obligation to recommend a reduction, or you can say an adjustment if this is the case. Would you be willing to reduce or adjust in 2 weeks' time if this is the case, right? I'll let you know if we're helping to sell other listings. That's a powerful statement ultimately, right? Because if we're priced too high, we're getting other people in and their competition's listed, then us being too high is helping us sell those other properties. Your fees are too high. I agree that the normal fees are too high for the value and resulting amount left in your pocket. That is why we demand a higher standard of listing when we list a property. We believe the old way of listing a property is dead, and it's time for our higher standard and an active process to sell your home. I can appreciate the investment is no small amount, and neither is your home. We strive for fairness and honesty. I don't really like that response. I would just cross that one off the list. It doesn't really address their concern. Maybe something like, I agree that normal fees are too high for the value and the resulting amount left in your pocket. However, we offer a higher standard when we list a property, right? We believe the old way of listing a property is dead, and it's time for a higher standard. We have an active process when we sell your home, where we don't just stick a sign in the yard and hope that it sells. We actively market your property, seek out buyers, to make sure that we sell your home for the most amount of money in the least amount of time, right? Something to that effect. I can appreciate the investment is no small amount, and neither is your home. We strive for fairness and honesty. I don't feel like that addresses the objection. I'd probably tweak that one just a little bit. Will you reduce your commission? I fully understand your desire to want to lower commissions. Correct me if I'm wrong in saying that ultimately what you would like is more in your pocket at the end of the day. If you select a team that will do it for less, this should make you nervous. Let me explain. Someone who just swipes their commission will likely be the same person who won't fight for you when an offer comes in or pay particular attention to your listing as we move forward, nor will they be advertising your property and getting it in as front of many people as they could. In my experience, agents that just swipe off their commission are the same agents that are out there for a quick, easy sale. I can almost guarantee you that you will be left with less in your pocket at the end of the day. Does this make sense? I like that one. I think that's a solid response. I think it builds the case for your value as well as letting them know that, hey, the other agent that you talked to that was willing to reduce, you're probably going to get a reduced level of service. A more intense response would be, this is the investment for the level of service. What service offerings would you like removed? Right? You could even go in with like a list of services that you offer as far as like all the things that you do during the transaction, from negotiation to repair negotiation, pictures, pre-sale inspections, whatever that would be, staging the home. So whatever you offer, you can like have that whole list of services out there. And then you could ask what they want removed. And then you can reduce your commission based on what they want removed. I do know some agents that go in there with like different listing packages. So, hey, if you want this level of service, it's this percentage. If you want this level of service, it's at this. And the bottom level is at this. And oftentimes they start over the average commission on the highest package. If you represent the buyer as well, what will your commission be? That's a great question. It is very rare that this occurs, as most buyers have or want their own representation, since my duties are fully to you. If it is our buyer that we have been working with, then we cannot alter the commission. However, if the buyer comes from simply a signed call, then we will discuss fair commission adjustment for our team to handle both sides. We believe everything about the process should be fair and honest. I would honestly just address it at the beginning. That's a great question. It's very rare that this occurs. And in most situations, we recommend that buyers have their own individual agent representing them. So I will not be representing both the buyer and you in the transaction, which allows me to watch out for your best interest and another agent to watch out for the best interest of a buyer. Does that make sense? And be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. My home is worth more. We did X, Y, Z, right? My home is worth more. We upgraded the kitchen. My home is worth more. We added $40,000 worth of solar panels, right? I hear you and I fully understand. We absolutely must account for this added value. And I know this helps differentiate your home in the market. We also have to fully analyze what a buyer would be willing to pay for this. And if we want to be right above where we should be, or if we will have the other homes help sell yours. It's all about positioning you in the best spot to have your desired outcome. Does that make sense? Right? So we're going to address it that way. How are you going to sell my home? We have a long list. Let's jump into 3 very important things. Marketing like no other. It's all about getting the most number of eyes on your listing. Advanced and continuous market and price analysis. And we have the experience and skill to bring an accepted offer to close. Many deals fall apart and return to the market. Also, there can be complications with closing. We excel post-offer to complete the deal. An offer is only first base. Right? We're setting them up for our value. Can I exclude a few people from the listing contract? I'm already talking to them and they might be interested in my home. Absolutely. We completely stand behind having our marketing leading to the buyer. We are willing to do a X week exclusion with just having you cover the startup marketing costs. From there, you are free to go through the whole process on your own, or we can represent you in the transaction, charging you only the listing side of the commission. Or would you prefer to go at it alone? Right? I'll tell you what, I'll pay you the full amount if you get my asking price, but your commission will go down with my return going down. I like that you are a tough negotiator. You should get into real estate. The tricky thing here is that it's hard. It's the hard cost to get your listing in front of the most, sorry. The tricky thing here is that the hard cost to get your listing in front of the most people will not change. By removing any further investment is food off my family's table. Actually, commissions are a percentage of the sales price. So as long as your accepted amount goes down, so do the commissions. That strategy is already built in logic. Okay, I would never, ever, I had a salesperson actually one time be like, hey, do you mind placing an order before the end of the month? Because my kids need new shoes. And that actually, I stopped using that salesperson after that. So I like that you're a tough negotiator. You should get into real estate. The tricky thing here is that the hard cost to get your listing in front of the most people will not change. And actually the commissions are a percentage of the sales price. So as your accepted amount goes down, so do the commissions. That strategy is already built in, right? We've addressed it. Yes, my commission will go down if the listing price is lower or the sales price is lower. My basement doesn't have permits, but I don't want to disclose this. I can fully appreciate and understand your desire to not have this affect your bottom line. We simply disclose this to avoid you getting sued down the road when you are moved into your new place. There have been recent cases where buyers have taken the seller to court for not disclosing permitting. It's actually a legal requirement. I'll tell you what. We will just put it in the realtor remarks so that agents will know, but it won't be visible on the public MLS. Does that work? Right? Easy answer. How about that number is too low? I'm not going to counter. I agree it's low. We'll definitely have to get them up closer to us. It's not uncommon for buyers to come in lower to feel a seller out. The tricky thing is that if we don't counter, we might be missing out on an opportunity here. I've seen these situations before and it's worked many times in the seller's favor. If we just have to give them something to work with. How about a conservative counter so we can see if we can get some movement out of them? I always encourage my sellers to counter, even if it's a super low offer. At least then we're playing ball and it's the buyer's not playing ball, not us. I know that we are only 5,000 apart, but I said I wasn't going to go below X. They can come up 5,000 or walk away. I'm with you in wanting the most out of your place, but oftentimes these situations come down to risk tolerance. We could work with this one or we could wait for the next one. Waiting is just a larger risk, right? Asking them to kind of move forward. Let's try to get another couple grand out of them. We definitely can. It's also really powerful to enter into the conditional period on good terms. I've seen countless deals fall apart because of frustration and both the seller and buyer lose. Sometimes it works best to do everything we can to stay on the best terms as we move into conditions. Know that I'm behind you 100%, right? If we're just like really close. This is only the first offer. Let's see if we get another one before we accept anything. Avoid this. It gives you a little note that avoid this off the bat by letting people know that the first offer is usually the best. I'm with you in wanting the most for your place, but oftentimes these situations come down to risk tolerance. We could work with this one or wait for the next one. Waiting is just a larger risk. All right. So that's a good thing to commit to memory. With you and waiting for the most for your place, but oftentimes these situations come down to risk tolerance. We can work with this one or wait for the next one. Waiting is just a larger risk. I like that. You can use it for lots of different things, right? Oftentimes too, this is why I set up an offer review date on my listings. Number one, I think it makes it more fair. Makes it easier on your sellers too, because if I throw a property on a market today and we're reviewing as received, then people are going to try to get in there at like 7 o'clock tonight that are interested in that property so that they can write an offer and if your agent's out of town or something, you've got people scrambling and things can get funky really quick. So I kind of like, hey, we come on the market on either Wednesday or Thursday, and we usually review offers on either Tuesday or Wednesday the next week. It gives everybody a fair chance to see it. I can ask them to come through the open houses. I get to do the open houses, which is a lead generation activity. And it makes sure that, hey, come Tuesday, what we've got on the table offer wise is what we're expecting to get. We don't have to like have this, ooh, should we wait a little longer? We've only gotten one offer. What should we wait and see? It's kind of like, hey, here's all the feedback. Here's what we got. We either have offers in hand or we're going to do that price adjustment to get your property where it should have been in the first place. Or in some cases, too, depending on what the market's doing that week, because the market's right all over the place. And some weeks there's like a longer wait on listings, and other weeks they're like flying off the shelves. And a lot of that has to do with where the interest rates are right now. And so sometimes it may not be after that first week that we do a price adjustment. If we're getting lots of showings, we just don't have an offer yet. So we just kind of wait it out another week or two. So remember, it's not always a super hot market. We aren't in any rush. If it sells, it sells. If not, we'll just take it off the market. Not motivated. Best to avoid working with this seller. You can work with them if they want to price aggressively, right? So it's we don't want to work with sellers that don't intend to sell their properties. So make sure that as part of your listing agreement, you're getting their motivation and making sure they're ready, willing, and able, right? Ready, willing, and able to sell their property, so that you're not wasting time, energy, and effort on marketing something that really they have no intention of selling. Did you all find these objection handlers helpful?
Absolutely. I loved a lot of them.
You love the what?
A lot of them.
Oh, nice.
So what about, hey, can you show me this property? I will, you know, I'm like, sure, I'll show you. So you show them, and then you call back to check up on them. Oh yeah, we thought it was really great. We put an offer in with our agent.
Well, you should always have the conversation up front if somebody wants to show you a right? And most of those don't happen with just like a random call. Usually it's like a Zillow lead or an internet lead, something like that. It's usually the ones where you encounter those. And so I don't know what your guys' complete rules are with regards to Zillow leads, but most online leads, you want to know, oh, have you seen other, like a good way to do it is the same way we would do it like at open houses. Oh, have you seen other properties, or is this the first one? Right? And they're like, oh, we've seen other properties. Oh, cool. How have you gotten into those properties? Right? Because now we've slushed out that, oh, they've seen other properties. Oh, we've just been passing through some open houses. We're finally getting serious, right? Or, oh, well, another agent showed us those listings. Right? So you want to ask questions to clarify. Once you're in the middle of Anastasia, once you have shown them a property and you call them to follow up and they say, oh, we've already submitted an offer with another agent, there's not really any objections that you can handle at that point. They've already moved forward with action to move forward on that property. So you really want to address that one before you get to that point. So you want to make sure you ask clarifying questions and obtain their agency status before you go show them properties. Or again, sometimes we show up at properties. It's best to obtain that before you go show properties. So just to ask them. So if they call, it's a Zillow lead, it's an online lead, it's a sign call, and they're like, hey, we want to go see this property. You can be like, fabulous. I'm happy to show you that property. Are you just starting your home search, or have you looked at other properties, right? That's one good way to obtain more information as to what is going on with their home search. Also finding out if they're pre-approved or not is one way, because very few people do sign calls and do random things and investigate homes on Zillow that are pre-approved. Oftentimes they're not yet pre-approved because they were just scrolling through the internet and they saw a house that they liked and they clicked on it. So most of the time, if they're pre-approved, they have an agent. Sometimes they're not, but I would say the majority of time they are. So you want to really feel those buyers out. And that comes down to, oh, great, I would love to show you that property. Let's meet at my office first, or let's meet at, Old Republic Title Company down in Antioch for 30 minutes before we go see that property, so that I can get to know you and get copies of your ID, and then we can go see the property, right? You can do safety and security, and then that's where you can meet with them. Go over the buyer representation agreement, and then oftentimes that's where it's going to come out. So that's always a good idea to meet with them first. Does that make sense, Anastasia?
Yes, ma'am. So in your neck of the woods, do they require you to have an agreement signed before you go show them the house? Because I know some states, they require that.
Yeah, we have an agency disclosure that has to be signed at the first meeting.
So how come California is so lagging in that area?
Well, because California is all about freedom and inclusivity, and by signing an exclusive thing, that's not inclusive. I don't know why California is like that. You don't have to have one signed at all. It's silly, but it's at most states, or a lot of other states, I won't say most, but a lot of other states do require an agency disclosure to be given upfront before you go show a property.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but ask clarifying questions of any buyer that wants to go see properties. And I would say I would start with, oh yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to show you that property. Number one, you can say, are there any other properties you would like to view? Because oftentimes they'll be like, oh, well, there are, but we already have appointments to see those with other agents, right? Big red flag there. Or you could ask, did you just start your home search, or have you seen other properties? Because now we're getting into their history and finding out kind of where they're at in the home search process. That question also would lead to, do you have your pre-approval taken care of, right? Have you talked with a lender about your financing options? So just a couple different ways to kind of get into that topic and really kind of slush that out before you drive an hour to go show them a property that then they're going to turn around and write an offer with a different agent. We don't want that happening. Any other questions, thoughts, ahas? Fabulous. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope this was helpful. Abby will post this objection handler number one. It was in the chat box. If you didn't see it up there, and Abby will send it out once the video is recorded, and the link is now in the chat box for you to log your attendance. And then also, if there's any other trainings you want to see coming up in the fall, we're going to revive our Rev Up series. That'll start in September. We have our schedule through August, so that'll start in September. We're putting together the new schedule. So if there's trainings you would like to see, throw them in the little suggested training box that you have on the attendance form, and we will look at those before putting together the next schedule so that we can get those on the calendar. I hope everyone has a fabulous day. Tomorrow we'll be back at 9 a.m. oh, yes, exactly. But tomorrow we'll be back at 9 a.m. Sorry, Abby just posted something in the chat box. Tomorrow we'll be back at 9 a.m. We're covering the contingency removal, the notice to perform, both the buyer and the seller, and the demand to close escrow as part of our summer forms series. And then today at 3 p.m., remember we got Scott coming back who taught our Chat GPT training. If you missed that one, it's on my YouTube channel. You can catch the replay. But he'll be back today talking about SEO and keywords, how to get your website or you to come up on the search when people search for real estate agents, how to get your properties to come up. So he'll be covering kind of all of that, how to set it up, how to do it well, and then why you want to do that. That's today at 3 p.m. And there's a link to register for that in the Foxhole group on Facebook. All right. Everyone have a fabulous day, and we'll see you back at 3 o'clock. I'm excited about that training. It's going to be a good one.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good day.
You too.